once again to another edition of Focus on Liberia, the marketplace. And today we have a great show for each and every one of you here today. We're excited. And look who is back. It is me. You can only hear my voice right now, just a little bit of technical difficulties. But hey, listen, there are some common faces here. You should be used to Gabriel and Alexander right now. And you can tell when it's Alexander or Alex because he always has a very beautiful painting in the back. And since the day one he's been coming on the show, I always love his paintings. He hasn't sent me one yet, but it is okay. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this thing. We're talking about debt. We all have our different side and perspective on this stuff. But at
Right.
Focus on Liberia, we want to promote, educate, and elevate, right? Or elevate, promote, and
Yep.
educate, or
Everything.
elevate, educate, and promote all things Liberian.
Yep.
So with that being said, we have a great show, and I'll let Gabriel. I'll please let you take it. And are you going to do the disclaimer, Gabriel, or should I just say something for
Yeah,
the?
just do the disclaimer.
So
Actually, thank you for bringing that up. We haven't been doing that, and I think we should be going forward. We should be doing that because it's very important. We don't want anybody taking this thing and misconstruing it and coming back to us. So, absolutely,
yes, this is
please.
very true. This is
Yep.
very true. So I will keep it short and sweet for
Yep.
time, but the things we talk about today, they should not be considered as financial advice. We
Hmm.
ask that if you listening and you want to make a financial decision with your money, that you please consult a licensed financial advisor before you
Yep.
make any decisions.
Yep.
These are just opinions and
Right.
thoughts of us, the panelists, and these are not professional opinions. So please make sure before you spend your money or invest in anything, consult with a licensed financial advisor. With that being said, Gabriel, to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for thank you. Have great having you back on. I know you went away for a little bit, but glad that you're back to be joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm regular here. Excuse me. My name is Gabriel Carter. I'm here with my co-host today. Today we're going to be talking about the national debt. When we began this series a few weeks ago, we initially started out with a summary. We gave you just an overview of the budget. We had a couple of guests on. First, it was Sebastian. We did cover the processes of how the government collects its revenue. I think we did two sessions on that, and we also had Dr. Gompu probably twice on two sessions. And I think last week we did one on the expenditure side of the things, right? So the collective revenue, we did cover how that revenue is actually spent. We also, talked about the process here as well, right? So within that, we've been on this budget for a little bit, quite a few weeks now, and but one thing that I think we've always been doing is this we've been missing what I call missing the elephant in the room. Like sometimes when the budget come out, we just look at the revenues or where they're spending the money on county development fund, administrative engagement. I think that was a thing for a lot of big noise that we're making a few weeks ago, but that has died down. But one thing that we never paid attention to, and I think it's been right in front of us, and just like for those of you who are accountants, if you get a tax return for what a major corporation, they tell you don't just read the statement that is within the line. You should look in the footnotes. And for us, we've been missing the footnotes in this aspect. Meaning, what I mean is that the footnotes is where usually accountants hide losses. So let's say if there's a lawsuit that is coming up on the company, they don't want you to see it. They'll put it in a footnote. If you don't read a footnote, you will miss it, right? So in this case, we've been reviewing the budget, right? We look at the revenues, we look at the expenditures, but one thing we've been missing, we not missing it, but we never really gone into detail with it, is the debt that the government is actually carrying, right? So today's session is dedicated towards that, specifically that we picked it apart. What we did, we picked it apart from beginning to end, not just saying the government owes this amount of money, but we're also telling you that who owes what type of entities within the government owes that money, what they're doing with it, how much has they been borrowing since they took over, how much the previous government actually had before that transition actually happened. So today, this is something I like to talk about because as part of my work, I also do part of this as well. So we're going to talk about this, and I am fortunate to have Alex here with me to be looking into that. Alex, again, thank you for joining us. It's great having you.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And William King, I got these good pictures because my wife, Joa, is an interior decorator. She does that for a living besides being in the nursing field. She also does that. So you can see these things in my house. And
Yeah, you're a lucky man.
yeah, you enter my house, the house is laid out properly. So I got to, even myself too, got to take time how to move things around because yeah, she does that for people sometimes, for friends and referrals and stuff like that. So that's why you see this picture. But recently, Answer tried to hook me up with the background thing, and I've been struggling with it. So I decided, you know what? Let me just come back to my to my paintings. So I'm here. So what? Yeah. Once again, my name is Alexander, but you can say Alex Coffee. And again, I'm the managing consultant for Allen Bernard International, a consulting company that focuses on helping business to grow through ideas. And we are here again on the program. Gabriel has said it all in the introduction. Last Saturday, we delved into the expenditure side of the budget. We look at the numbers. We also look at some of the things that we look at the total numbers, and we look at the impact on that. There was some beautiful questions here. So I'd like to also say welcome to our audience, those that are listening and those that are commenting, and our regular people that come on this show, as well as the new people that will come on board. Let's have a show tonight. We'll be talking about the debt. Now, the expenditure, we try to go into that in terms of looking at the impact. What has the expenses, all these monies that we've been spending over the year, what has it done for our people? What has it done for our country, and what impact it has on the government? But you look deep down into the budget. If you look at the different sectors and you look at the different entities that are within there, sometimes you see some entities that are consuming more of the money. There you see some entities that are really there. Sometimes you ask yourself, what are they doing there? Should government
Raise your voice a little bit, Alex. Right.
Yeah, you ask yourself, what are they doing there? Should government let some of these entities go to reduce the size of the budget, or to optimize the budget, so that the money goes to some of the right places, also to some development project. But that is something that we will be discussing in our next presentation. But today, we will be looking at the debt, and my man Gabriel here, the area. So he will be in a hot seat, and I will just be doing the numbers as usual.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at a snapshot of the debt, just a summary, William.
So yeah, do you want to cover that?
Yeah, I just want to look at the numbers. If you look at the numbers there, these are numbers that we took from the Ministry of Finance website. Sometimes we consulted the central bank website, but these are numbers that we took from the Ministry of Finance website.
Right.
And as you see it, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years comparison.
5 years trend.
The FY there stands for fiscal year. So fiscal year 2016-2017, because the year starts from July 1 and it ends the next year, June 30th. So as of 2016-2017, that was the total debt that we have broken down into domestic debt. Domestic debt is the one that the debt that the government take upon domestically. That is entities that the government of Liberia owe money, starting from the central bank to the commercial bank to some of the even the entities within the government like NASCAR and all those. And the the external debt are the debts that we take from entities outside, whether multilateral or bilateral. Some people like the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and those monies that we take for different projects and things like that. So that is what you have there. So even though we've made some payments, as you saw in our expenditure side of the budget, the government always budget some payment as required when these loans come due. So you can see some movement, but overall, there have been an upward movement of the budget numbers, as you can see there. So these figures are in millions. So, for example, 2016-2017 is 848.99 million. And if you come to 2019-2020 and 2020-21, it's in billion. So our budget has grown from 2016-2017 from 848 million to, as of June 30th, 2021, to 1.6 or 1673.51 billion. So if you round that up, it will be 1.7 billion. That is what we owe as of now, even though we've made some payment. But significantly, look at the trend there. Between 2018 and 2019, the balance there was 1.1 or 1.2 billion, but that jumped to 1.5 billion. That means we took about $300 million in debt. I mean, plus and minus because we made some payments. So on average, we took about 300 million. But if you compare the numbers from 2018, that is, because if you want to do a government to government, then probably you might be good because the 2016, 2017, at the end of 2017, there was an election in October. The new government came into force in January 2018. But of course, government has continued. So some things that are started in 2016, 2017 would have materialized in 2018. So probably we want to say, okay, as of 2018, let's look at the comparison. So as of June 30th, 2018, the debt was 942.6 million. And then 2018, 2019, it jumped to 1.2 billion. So that means from government to government, there has been loans that have been taken. So those are the numbers. That's a brief analysis of the numbers, and I will let Gabriel take his seat. Gabriel.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you for covering that. I think that is a good overview of what we want to talk about today. Let me see here. 484 minus 92. 4 minus. Yeah. So again, thank you. I was just trying to calculate the total debt from one government to another. I will figure that out in a few. But again, thank you for covering that. I think today the reason why I think this is very important because as I said earlier, we have covered the budget over and over, not just doing this series. I think every time the budget comes out, we usually do a session on the budget, just giving an overview analysis of what it is. But one thing that we've always been missing in that analysis is that the debt portion of it. We've never really dug deep into the debt to really analyze it and see, how much debt we're borrowing year over year, every year, how much debt we're taking on. So today's session is going to be about that, right? But there's some things like I want to paint this picture to our audience. So right now we're at $1.7 billion in debt, right? Currently, our GDP is worth three 3.36. So it grew a little bit from 3.1 to 3.36. So that's a good thing. For just a basic understanding of what a GDP is, it's called the gross domestic product, right? It's the total monetary or market value of the finished goods and services produced within the country's border within a very specific period of time, right? So technically, what it is, if you want to now go into, the health or happiness index, right? Technically, what it is it gives a good pulse on the health of a country's economy. So that's technically what a GDP is. And our country's GDP right now is 3.36 billion dollars. However, for every dollar our GDP is worth, we owe 50%, right? That's 50 cents. For every dollar our GDP is worth, we owe 50 cents. So right now our debt to GDP, what's called debt to GDP, is 50%, right? So just think about that a little bit, right? In as much as our GDP has been growing, you know, uh, we've also kept up borrowing massively. And we've missed that. Every time we've covered the budget, we've missed that. And this is why when we finally decided to go into it, I said, we're going to go deeper into that to make sense of it and see exactly what that means, right? So that is where we are right now. For the sake of this discussion today, there are a few questions we want to take a look at, right? What we want to know is the government of Liberia living on debt, right? Famously, you heard a presidential candidate say he was living on loans. Well, technically, we want to ask that same question based on what we have, the analysis we made. Is the government of Liberia living on debt? And I think we've missed that part of it. If senators and other talk show hosts were fortunate to go dig into this thing, they would have been gun holes on talking about this, right? So that's one question. So why is the other one, why are we borrowing over $100 million a year, and what are we doing? Why are we borrowing that much money every year? Over $100 million a year, right?
And that could be between 20 to 15 to 25% of our total national budget.
Man, thank you for doing that quick math. You're right about that. Exactly, right? That could be between about 20% of our national budget. So we're borrowing, even though we're technically raising this revenue. We have this revenue that we get every year. We're also borrowing massively, right? Why are we doing that if we're raising that much money and we're spending it towards other things? We're not having a deficit supposedly from what we've been seeing, right? So why are we borrowing this excessive amount of money, right? So that's one question I want you guys to think about. The other ones, do we have, I've never heard of this, but it's a question that I want to ask and we will go into that. Do we have a debt ceiling in Liberia? And if not, why isn't the Senate Finance Committee in Liberia reviewing this level of debt? Are they oblivious?
The question is, the question will be, are they reviewing it?
Are they even reviewing it, right? Because this is huge. I know we don't want to, sound like an alarmist here, but this is very important.
Yeah, I say that because before the government take on debt, it has to go to the national legislature for ratification.
So they do that.
Yeah, they do. It goes any debt that the government takes on.
And they okay this thing.
Yeah, even if say the multilateral was giving us money, and part of that money, I remember one time. Mm-hmm. They were giving us for lack of I can't remember the number, but it was like 24 million, right?
Right.
When 20 million of that money was grant, 4 million was debt, and that money was held up until that 4 million part had to be approved, had to be rectified by the legislature before they could the money could change hands. So yes, they go. But the question, that's why I said the question is, do we have a debt limit, a debt
Right.
ceiling?
Right. Right.
And the debt ceiling could be the ceiling to how high you can borrow. All right.
Given. Right.
So how much is the maximum that you can borrow?
Right.
That if you reach that maximum, then it must go back to the national legislature or whatever. They must discuss it, how to increase that
Perfect.
ceiling.
Yep.
Right. To say, okay, the country has to survive. Like, for example, in the printing of money, right?
Right. Yep.
The government needed more money. The central bank made the position clear. They made all the presentation to the national legislature, and they said, okay, go ahead. So yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. And you said I wasn't aware of that. So let me wrap up the questions here. So also, we know that the government issue, from what we found out, we know that the government issued treasury bonds, right? Treasury bond, that is, from a basic economic standpoint, or to allow you guys to understand how central bank works, right? Central banks is usually when the government want to, let's say, if they want to take on projects, right? If they don't have the money, they can issue debt. So they issue debt to the public, usually the commercial banks or other financial institution will buy that, right? That's how they make that money, and then they go to take on that project, right? And in this case, we do have treasury bonds that are issued. To sometimes they go to the central banks. I mean, not the central bank, the commercial banks. But I don't think a lot of Liberians are aware of it, right? If they're aware of it, I understand, the country that we're in, we're a very poor country. Not many are aware of it, but how many people partake in that to say, hey, you can just go to your typical bank or your commercial banks and actually tell them, say, hey, I have some money, I want to buy some government treasury bonds, even if the interest rate is about 1.2% or even less than a percentage point, given where we are in the interest rate, right? Why aren't it available to Liberian, the typical Liberian, right? Also, can the government of Liberia fix its credit rating program? I mean, its credit rating to be able to issue debt on the international market. We know Africa does it, Ghana does it, many other countries do it, right? Can it actually take an honest, intentional step to working on its own credit rating to be able to issue debt on the international market? So that means it doesn't have to focus more on domestic debt, or even if it were going on the international market, because they have a good credit rating, you have a credit rating, you'll be able to do so at a very discounted rate. All right. So that's another question we want to address today. And also, why are the state-owned enterprises, why do they have so much debt? Believe it or not, and we're not just throwing the question out, they do. That's something we uncovered today. And most of you, as I said, we've been breezing over this thing that we weren't able to dig deeper, but we found out that most of these state-owned enterprises are leveraged, what we call highly leveraged. I mean, they're highly in debt, right? So that was one of the questions we want to answer today. And also, are they running on debt? So those 6 questions will be the point of our discussion today. We want to answer those questions. We want to discuss those questions. As we discuss the budget, we want to take our time in answering those questions as well. So that's what we're going to be doing with the rest of the show.
Yeah, but that last part is something that I'm interested in, because when we did the GMAP project, when I worked on the GMAP project in Liberia between 2006 and 2010, the significant efforts were made to bring these state-owned enterprises up to par, especially the 4 that we work with: the Rabat International Airport, the LPRC, the Liberia Petroleum Refining Company, the National Port Authority, the Forestry Development Authority, the FDA. A lot of effort were put into making, for example, a specific case, making the airport, the RIA, liquid. Because yes, when we started the project, it was in debt. It was in the negative. It was in the red. And we did a lot, bringing the revenue back to the table and making the entity viable. But unfortunately, things are spiral, backwards, and these entities are back on, these entities are more of have become more of liabilities to the government than because the intent of you opening a corporation is
Right.
to make money, to make a
Right.
profit.
Yep.
And the intent, these entities are supposed to be giving the government what we call a dividend, right? So
Right.
it's like an investment. If you buy stock, if you buy shares in any company, you're supposed to get a dividend back, right?
Right.
So every year, these entities are supposed to be contributing to the government national budget.
Mhm.
But a lot of them, yeah, some of them give money, like the National Port Authority, to some extent, the LPRC. For the FDA, the
Right.
rules changed. Unlike years back when it was collecting the money and giving some to the government. But these days, the forestry development money goes directly into government revenue.
Interesting.
Yeah, it goes directly into the single, the general account of the government. It doesn't go
Right.
to federal FDA. So FDA has become an entity on the government budget that the government has to give, budgetary allotment to. So
Mhm.
the FDA is in a different situation. But the RIA, the LPRC, the NPA, they still operate like state enterprises, and they're supposed to give these dividends to the government every year. But
Right.
unfortunately, for some reason, especially the RIA has not been able to do that over these years. The
Yeah.
NPA does that a little bit. The LPRC does that a little bit, but the RIA has not been able to do that over the years. So these entities, so that's something I'm interested in.
No, we'll get to that, and I
Mhm.
think that's a great point, right? So I know we initially put the 5-year trend of the budget on the screen earlier, right?
Mhm.
So what I just why you in a while you were having that discussion, what I did, uh, actually beautiful, right? So if you look at since 2017, when the current administration took over to uh, last the last fiscal budget was, I think, was in June, right? End of June, right? We have amassed $596 million in debt from 17, 16, 17 to 2020, 2021, right?
Mhm.
So that is 4 years. The reason why I'm dividing it by 4 years because this administration has been in power for 4 years. So if you divide that by 4 years, we are borrowing about $149 million a year. That is in addition to the revenue that we're collecting, right? Um, so I just want that to just allow that to sink in a little bit. For $149 million a year, right? That's how much we're borrowing, right? And if you, as you can see on the screen right now, there has been a very there has been growth, like interest increase in the budget year over year, up to where we are currently, which currently sits at $1.7 billion. And I think, as my co-host pointed out earlier, that the Senate does review every debt proposal that is on the table that we're going to take out. So the biggest question becomes, how familiar are these people, the senators and the representatives, about the level of debt that we're carrying? Like, are they even aware of it? Do they even understand the magnitude of it, the implication of it, or what it actually means on the economy of Liberia? Or even if they're not even thinking about this administration, which is they're running, are they even thinking about the long-term implication if the next administration takes over, how that could actually strangulate them from doing the things, from carrying out their own agenda as they wanted to do, right? uh, are we thinking about that? Whether you want to put this from an administration to administration standpoint, at the end of the day, it impacts the future of the country, right? Let's say we take on this massive level of debt right now, and the next administration comes in and they can't do anything because they have to deal with this debt. You can't go borrow on the international market because they can tell you, they're going to tell you that there's so much debt you have right now. You got to pay down some of that debt before you even come out to before we can even look at you, right? The time is going to take you to pay back some of those debt could be years wasted, So the question, the thing that the question that keep puzzling me is, how come the Senate Committee on Finance doesn't, hold back, as I think you rightly pointed out. Why is it that they're not, kind of easing up on the level of borrowing? How come we can't even set a debt limit to say, okay, at this level of GDP, we're going to set this level of debt that we can borrow until we're able to pay it down. Then if we need to borrow again, we can lift that debt ceiling to make sure we have more appetite for additional borrowing on the international market or domestically. That was one of the biggest questions. So maybe you can shed light on this one.
No, the like I said, I'm not aware of whether there's a debt ceiling situation in Liberia. But what I do know is this is by law, by the Constitution, because it's the legislature that is empowered to make the country enter into debt.
Right.
That's part of the Constitution. I don't know which article of but that is what is done in Liberia. Like in the United States of America, right now they're talking about raising the debt ceiling in the United States of America. It has to go through. There's a $3.2 trillion dollar investment package that Biden is talking about. It's the same thing in Liberia, where it has to go through the legislature. But in terms of a ceiling, I'm not sure. But again, let's look at a year on year, whether Liberia has reached an extent that it can borrow, because borrowing depends on, it's like before you go borrow, it will depends on your credit rating, right?
Right.
It depends on how much you can borrow, whether you can borrow in the first place, and if you can borrow, how much you can borrow, to what extent you can borrow.
Right.
And then as an individual, to look at your income, how much you're making, whether it's a stable income, and then they will compare then how much debt you can take or how much debt you already have. Looking at your income. You talk about the GDP thing. You talk about the GDP to debt ratio that you talked about earlier is 50%.
Right.
So that means that for every dollar that we make in a country, we got to pay what 50 cents. So half of our money has to go into paying debt back. So there can be benchmark to say, okay, your debt to income, your debt to GDP ratio has to be this amount.
Yeah.
It has to be this percentage, or it has to be this. And beyond that, you can't borrow this much, right? Especially, those big loans and things like that. You remember back in the, few years ago, that's why we had the trouble with whether we could borrow from
in Boma.
certain amount of money the government wanted to borrow from, Iboma and Eton and those kind of loans to do the much needed projects, the road corridor that the government wanted to embark upon. Unfortunately, the government has not been able to borrow money from anywhere else, even with the traditional loans from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and those places. They have not been able, because of our debt to GDP ratio situation that we have. The fact that for every dollar that we raise, we got to pay 50 cents in that's you rightly calculated. So that is hampering our ability to go, take on debt, right? So I wouldn't speak to the issue of debt ceiling. I would speak to the issue of our ability to be able to, take on more debt to do the multi-development project that we need. Except our revenue grew up, except our budget expand. Like for example, if our budget expand to $1 billion,
right,
from this 500 something or 600 something million to $1 billion, maybe that will give us that leverage to be able to borrow for the needed development project. So,
no, I agree with you, and I think I don't want us to get into this narrative of trying to compare ourselves to the U.S. Right? I think the U.S. right now, they're when I was in grad school or in the investment banking world, the U.S. Treasury is, the yield on the U.S. Treasury is what we consider the risk-free rate, right? The reason why we consider the risk-free rate is because regardless of how much debt they have, they always pay their debt, right? They're always paying on their debt, so they can never default on it. So usually in the investment banking world, or that's what we consider the risk-free rate. Right now, if you look at it, the comparison is for every U.S. person in the United States, they're carrying about, if you divide the 28, I think we're at 28 trillion. If we're not almost at 30 trillion dollar in debt to each person, that's about $250,000 of debt each person is responsible for, right? So I don't want us to compare ourselves to them, because it's kind of like it's skew in a very in a very negative way, and the circumstances don't call for it. So I agree with you, but I agree with you on this also as well, that we also need to really assess our borrow ability, right? One of the questions that we want us to look at here is that, would you agree that we have, because of our inability to looking if we look at the trend of the revenues, which we've covered in 2 previous sessions, our inability to be able to turn the deficit is actually strangulating, for lack of better words, our ability to be able to uh, could that be the reason why we're actually borrowing a lot to do other things? Now, given the fact, if we were raising revenue year over year, we're growing the revenue. I mean, growing the revenue year over year, we would have enough to do those other things. But because we don't, so we have to go on a we have to borrow to do that. Do you think that was? I mean, for me, I think that's one of the things. That's the only rationale that I want to, the only slack I would like to cut these people's. To say that's the reason why they're borrowing. But and I'm from what we do, I'm not against borrowing, right? Debt, I'm not against debt. Debt is good. Debt is, a debt managed correctly is good, right? If you measure your risk appetite for debt, you take on the right amount of debt, you allocate it, you do the right things to it, and it's yielding some returns, you can continue to borrow at a good rate. However, what I think is happening now is that we're borrowing all this money at $149 million a year. If you divide the entire debt stock from since this government took over to now, is that we're not properly managing that money. We're not investing it in the earmarks for which the debt is actually earmarked for. So if you look at it, which we will get into later, if you look at some of the debt we're taking on, some are actually earmarked for the West African Power Pool, right? Some for agriculture, some for I think some forestation, tree management projects, right? But are we actually investing in our electricity, right? The power pool, are we actually investing in our agriculture? How come we're not putting the money in a place in an investable vehicle where we can yield some returns? And that's the problem that I'm having with the level of debt that we're having right now. So borrowing, I'm not against borrowing, especially in this environment that we're in. The rate are cheap. They might be going up next year, so it could be even harder for them to do that on an international market. But they should be doing so responsibly. Responsible borrowing, responsible growth, responsible borrowing, right? And for me, that's the problem that I'm having with the level of debt that we have right now. It's not that we shouldn't have it. We should, but at the same time, we should do it responsibly and then make sure we invest those things in key infrastructure development to be able to make sure that we're growing. If we're not doing that, which in this case we're not doing, that means that all we're doing, we're accumulating debt, right? It's just like the perfect example I want to give, right? Let's say you run Allen Bernard Corporation. You go to a bank to borrow, you're trying to borrow money. If you come, I'm looking at your balance sheet, I'm looking at your growth, your revenues for maybe the last 5 years, and say, oh, this guy has been growing this company, right? His debt to net worth is below, I think 2%. 2% is the sweet spot, right? His current ratio, that means this guy can pay back his money 2 times, 1 and 2 times over, if something happened within a year or so, right? Those are the things that I'm looking at. That means this guy know how to manage his money. He has a lot of cash on his hand, but he also invested in key infrastructure, let's say research and development, that will help him in the next 5 years or 10 years, right? Now, if I'm looking at that, I say this is a model company that I want to lend to, right? But in this case, where we have debt to GDP at 50%, like that profile, whether you're going on an international market or domestic market, it becomes challenging for people to give you debt at a reasonable rate that that will make you pay back this thing quicker, right? And the reason why I say that is because if you look further into the budget, which we've covered, we pay back annually 34. I think about $34 million on that debt. That is nothing. If you're borrowing 149 million dollar a year, you're only paying back $34 million. You're left with 149. You're left with 115, right? That is another debt that you're carrying over for the next year, and you're adding another one. The following year you're adding another 149 million there. That means in perpetuity you're never going to catch up on paying that debt. So I'm not against that they're borrowing. What I mean again is that they're not doing so responsibly, right?
Yeah. So you would note that some years back, you will note that some years back, there was this debt forgiveness situation, right, where we owe about, I think, 4 something billion.
4.6, I think, billion. Yes.
So those and the previous government under Johnson Sirleaf entered into a program to forgive the debt, right? And after that process, it comes with some string, right? We had some string attached to that forgiveness. You know that when somebody forgave your debt,
austerity,
it kind of put you into austerity measures. It kind of formulate you. There are things you can do, there are things you cannot do, right? It's just like you have a heavy burden on you. So there's so much you can do and so much you cannot do. There's so much you can borrow and so much you cannot borrow. So why it is true that it was a good thing, and we at least that debt was forgiven, but it's also put us in a situation. But it depends on our productive capacity, how we can spin off quickly.
Absolutely.
So how we can spin up that quickly, but to the extent that we can borrow, the government have been borrowing over time, right? So, for example, if you look at the numbers, William, do you have some of the numbers there?
The first snapshot that we had,
No,
the trend analysis, 5-year trend.
No, there's a second. There are some other ones.
Yes, I'm going to put up the 5-year trend, and then Alex, I'm going to follow up with what you just mentioned. It's going to be coming up shortly.
Okay, perfect.
So you see that for example, during the Johnson Sirleaf administration, when the debt forgiveness program was entered into the HIPIC, as they call it, when the government entered the HIPIC program and all those debt was forgiven, it took some time. So you will see that our current debt balance as of June 2021, June 30th, 2021, is about 1.673 billion, right? Now let's compare that with because many people always ask this question. So with the debt balance as of, say, let make it June 30th, 2018, like I said. So June 20th, 2018 was 942.6 million, right? So basically that was about because when you enter a situation to contract a loan, a debt, it has to go, like I say, it's a process. It has to go through the legislature. The legislature has to rectify it before it becomes, because the funds become available.
Right.
So if you look at 2018, June 30th, 942, so that gives a difference of 730.91 million, right? So that means that about the end of the Johnson Sirleaf administration, our debt stock was about 942 million, right? As compared to now. So does that mean, if the math is correct, does that mean that the current administration then contracted about that difference, that 30,
They grew
21,
they grew at the same amount
over the
technically.
last 3 years. Again, it's just comparing balance to balance,
Right.
as we call it, analytical review. It may not be fact, but I mean, judging by that amount, that could be the amount contracted. So we still that says that we still have some ability to be able to take on some loans, right? Because if you also look at the table there between 2018 and 2019, you see that there's a movement of about 300 million.
Hmm.
So that 300, so there was some, there was borrowing. But let's look at where the question then is. Yeah, we know where this money comes from, right? So let's deep that. William, I sent you a slide on the domestic loan, the breakout of the domestic loan and the external loan. Can you put the okay?
There it is.
Let's look at where this money comes from. Is that way you can increase that a little bit? Or no way?
You want me? I can see it. I don't know if you
Use
can
that
increase
one
that.
first. Use that one for a second. I
So-
want to see if I can expand it.
So as of 2020, 2021, the last column there, that is as of June 30th,
2021.
2021. That's the end of the last fiscal year. So you see that we had total domestic debt as of that period.
Mhm.
Again, there are movement. We take more loan, we pay some, we take more loan. So as at that date,
Mhm.
all right, it's a balance sheet discussion. It's not for the period ended, but as of that period. From that moment, this is what we owed at that time. If the figures from this figure again, they are from the Ministry of Finance website. That's the total of 525 million, right? Of which central bank has the no, that's a total of 690.76 million. 690 the total
Domestic, right?
domestic debt.
Yep.
The central bank contributes more than 80% of that. So
Yep.
we owe the central bank more money. That is, we owe the central bank 525.48 million. That's what we owe the central bank.
Right.
Then we owe the commercial banks. We owe the commercial banks 94.74 million.
Yep.
As of that day. This one has nothing to do with, it's a cumulative figure that we owe. It has nothing to do with any particular government who owes what, who contracted what. But this is as of the end of the 2021 fiscal year. This is what we owe. And you see the breakdown there. We owe Afriland, EcoBank, LBDI, United Bank,
Treasury bonds at 48 million.
GN Bank, GT Bank, RB Bank, all these treasury bonds like you were talking about.
Yep.
The CBL treasury bond, adjusted EcoBank, LBDI. So yeah, so that means that shows that the government also make the treasury bond available through the commercial banks.
Yep.
Right? As shown by the figures there. So then the other institutions that we owe money. Among that is NASCOP, the Social Security Welfare Corporation. We owe the NASCOP 43.82 million. Okay. We also owe the PMC 20 million, which is a round figure there. But then remember now, we owe the court too, right? But that like when somebody sue the government.
Excuse me for laughing, but this is funny.
When somebody sue the government and the person wins the case,
They can pay. The government can pay.
No, the government paying, but then that's the balance. The government pays from now. Sometimes the government enter into an agreement to pay the person over 3 years or 5 years. So yeah. So when you go to court, people owe the government too through the courts. So the government owe to when government lost the case, the government people owe the government owe people. So as you can see that. So that's the domestic part. So the government has to function. So the government everybody take. I mean, don't get it wrong. Taking debt, taking loan is not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Yep.
The great countries take loan. China, all these countries take loan. Ghana, they all take loan. I mean, that's how you can develop. Even us as individuals, we do take loan. This is a capitalist world.
Yep.
People live on credit. You come to America, you know, a lot of people live on credit even more than they earn. So, I mean, taking loan is not a bad thing. So William, let's look at the external. Where
portion.
where does the money come from externally? Let's look at that slide. No, not this one. Yeah. So if you see that the sources of the external debt, I mean, even though the balances are not there, but this is from the World Bank for general sources, for general different projects. I mean, too many different projects. The African Development Bank for the energy efficiency project. The
West African, right?
Yeah, the IFD through the World Bank for the West African Power Pool. Government of China, general sources. Government of Kuwait, general stuff. Saudi Arabia, and the IMF. I'm sure the IMF for general stuff. The IMF has been giving us some loans. So that is where the external, but then what do we use this money on? This debt. William, now you can bring the other slide. The other chart, yes. This is, where is this money going, Mr. Gabriel Carter? Mr. Carter.
Yes.
You can take on this one. Where is
yeah,
this
so
money
and
going
this and this is you know, when I saw this slide, I kind of got you know, like people say, like you get this kind of feeling as you feel like something's crawling on you, right? I've always said, I think we've said this earlier, that borrowing is not a bad thing, but do so responsibly, right? But and for us, the type of government we have state-owned. We're still in this kind of archaic form of government where we have state-owned enterprises. I think most government has moved away from that, right? So anyway, these state-owned enterprises have to function. They have to carry out their duty. But the biggest question is, do they not make enough money to fund themselves? And what I mean is, like, let's say hypothetically the LEC, right? The LEC should be an entity that can generate money to be able to pay for its expenses, and at the same time be able to have some monies left over at the end of the year to, you know, put in the general government coffers, right? But we're seeing here, from all the external combine the external debt and domestic debt that we get collectively, this is where it's actually spent. This is where the government spend it. So the Ministry of Public Works, I think that's what MPW stands for, right? 508 million, let's say $509 million, right? LEC / LME, I don't know what the LME stands for. $259 million. And there's another one for LEC for 118, right? Technically 119, right? Ministries of I think of agriculture, right?
Agriculture, yeah. You see why their budget low now? They're taking loan too of 89 million.
Well, if you're taking, let's say if the budget is low, right? Even if you're taking all that money, you should be able to be invested for long term, right? You should be able to invest in the agriculture sector and to be able to pay back this money easily. So even though the budget allocated, you know, not much money towards you, you have enough. You're highly leveraged. You're not supposed to misuse that money. Invest it in the agriculture sector and let the money, let the debt that you borrow work for you, right? Ministry of Health, I think that's what MOA stands for, right?
Ministry of Health,
right, $140 million. LA, I think you said that earlier. The
Liberia Airport Authority.
Liberia Airport Authority, 52, right?
Yeah, that money they got from Asian Bank for the new airport.
Okay. And we have the one that puzzled me is this one, the next one here, Ministry of Finance and Planning and Development. They borrow $187 million. I mean,
no,
why?
I wouldn't say no. I mean, let me take it back. I wouldn't say they borrow. The entities do not. The government borrow for projects.
The government borrow.
And these projects these are the implementing agencies, right? So, for example, The Ministry of Public Works, I will assume that it's for road development, road repairs, and stuff like that. So
Correct.
you go and contract loan debt for this project, for say
Right.
the road corridor between Grand Gide and River G.
Right.
All right. And so the Ministry of Public Works is the entity that implement that. So this is the entity that you will
It takes on that portion,
under.
that amount.
So I will imagine that the Ministry of Finance as well,
Right.
and will undertake some of these loan related projects or paying some things back. Like we said the last time, why is their budget high? It's because the payment of loan and other things are channeled through them, so it's captured under their budget. So
perfect.
So it's you see, so you can go on.
Yeah, no, thank you for that correction. So we got the RIA, right? Liberia, I forgot what it stands for. $30 million, right? What do you know what this LME stands for? I couldn't. I think I must have missed the acronym for it. What that acronym means, right?
Land, mines, and energy.
There you go, right? $30 million. Then the LTA, Liberia Transportation Authority.
No, Liberia Telecommunication
Authority.
Telecommunication,
right? Mm-hmm. 25. National Port Authority, 14. Ministry of Youth, right? At 10 million. Then MDG, I don't know what that stands for, at 10 million.
Ministry of
right, and then we have the last one, MCC, mm-hmm. 4 million.
Morea City Corporation.
Morea City Corporation at 4 million. So
the MGG is, I think it has to do with gender.
It has to do with what?
Ministry of Gender.
Ministry of Gender. Oh yeah, okay. I think you're right. Man, look how much money we're spending on. I mean, what are we doing there? We have all these rape in the country. We have all that. But anyways, right? So technically, in totality, this is where all that money we're borrowing year over year. This is these are the administrations that undertake some of those projects that's supposed to.
So, like you said, like Dr. Gumpu said the last time. So, mm-hmm. when you look at the LEC, that is where he was coming from. But because I asked the question, why is LEC on the budget at mm-hmm. that amount? Mm-hmm. So he was explaining, but now that you see, this is when whether it's the Millennium Compact money or different monies, the government also, as part of that deal, the government also contract loans. Okay, the government's own contribution, or not even its contribution, but portion of that money is loan. Yes,
you can take that down, please. All right.
No, let it up there.
Okay.
So say the entire project costs, say 300 million or 500 million, and I mean these are different loans combined. So all these loans over the period, part of it is going towards the electricity project, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why you see LEC, LME, and then LEC itself, right? So these are two different projects under the LEC program, under the electricity program. All right. So these are the amounts that are going towards that project. Now, the question that I beg to ask is, how much is this total towards the LEC project in terms of loan debt to our country? And what value are we getting from it as a country as compared to how much other countries are spending and what value they're getting out of it? Mm-hmm. Right? This is more than what? More than 300 million, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do the math, 300 and something million, almost 400 million, right? So that's 370 something million. So that's almost 400 million. That is in terms of loans. What do we have today in terms of our power grid?
That's a great question.
After contracting this amount of loan, in addition to the other funds that were given to the Millennium Grant and to the other different projects and things, and we took loan of almost $400 million. What is the result? Do we have the whole country electrified? Do we have the whole city of Monrovia electrified, especially in this productive sector? Are we providing electricity to the extent that these companies are, will attract companies that the cost of doing business will go down?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember one time in Liberia, we did some calculation that companies were spending between 60 to 70% of the budget in just producing energy for themselves through the generators and all that different things they were doing, right? So that was high, and some companies were sort of fed up, so they prefer to go do take their stuff to Ivory Coast or to Ghana or to Sierra Leone to produce, and then export, ship it to Liberia to sell. I remember we did some project on doing business in Liberia under the IFC of the World Bank, and those were some of the feedback we got. Some entities, when we interviewed them, they prefer to go and do their production in different countries because the cost of doing business, especially provision of electric energy, was too high. But the question is, we're spending all these monies over the years. Of course, a lot of these monies were spent under previous government, not this government. A lot of these monies were spent on the previous government. What benefit are we attaining as a country that up to date we're now depending on the West African power pool?
Right.
Another question is because you saw on the board there the West African power pool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Willem, please bring that slide back. So you see this African Development Bank. The
International Fund for Development,
West Africa Power Pool.
Right.
So who knows whether some of that fund, some of that money is loan money. All right. So, but at the end of the day, we have spent a lot of money into the energy sector, and we need to get return in a way that, okay, we have our electric power grid. At least we can provide electricity in almost all the capital cities of every county, including Monrovia.
Right.
All of Monrovia, and at least in the capital city of each county.
All right.
But I think that's good news because the West African power pool is coming online.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that earlier. So there are some places in Monrovia, I think either in Monrovia also, or within the country where the West African power pool is actually the primary source of electricity in those counties. Especially one I'm aware of is Maryland. I know Maryland is solely dependent on the West African power pool, which is I think they said they get it from the Ivory Coast, right?
Part of NIMBA too. NIMBA.
Right, exactly. So I'm not sure if they're looking at that to become the primary power source in Liberia, or we're doing something independent of that West African power.
So what is happening is through that project, the West African power pool, they're installing all these stations, right, into the different parts, so into the different countries, in the countries that are involved, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, Guinea, Liberia. So you remember recently there was a ceremony held where the project manager, the guy who's over the project, is a Liberian guy. He's a friend of mine. I visited him when I went to Ivory Coast. So they kind of dedicated that project. And what is supposed to happen now is it's like I brought this container full of water here, right? I sat it down here for this community. Okay. It is now your duty to take bucket
and go get it.
And go get it water.
Right.
And make sure that water now serves, you share, so that's the distribution part. So it is the government now supposed to take this thing through the LEC grade to distribute this power to the country.
Right.
All right. But even though some of that is already being, some of the counties are feeding off on that already.
Right.
But on the Morovia side, that is why it is located, the portion that is located in other Ivory Coast and those places. So Maryland will feed out of that.
Right.
Right. So those companies that are distributing, or those countries through their distributing entities, whether they're private sector led people that are distributing it. So ours is around the White Plain area, right?
Okay.
So we're supposed to serve Kakata, Morovia, and all those areas. Now the government, through the LEC power grid, is supposed to distribute that. So whether they're going to privatize that, what they're doing, yes, but at least we have that there now that we can feed off. So that was a feat that that was achieved, and the Minister of Finance was there. They kind of did the dedication program, because the Minister of Finance and the guy who is on top of the project, he's based in Ivory Coast. They're all colleagues, they're all friends. So that was a good program, but we expect that it will now pay dividends in Liberia through that distribution. But I don't know.
So in from an overview standpoint, right? I think that is one project or one earmark project that we think in eventually will have a long-term benefit to the country, right? Like specifically the energy
when I
aspect.
bring that stuff again, bring that chat.
So we know that is going. That's the one project that we know is going to have.
The other one.
But so we know that is going to have a long-term benefit to the country, because power without electricity in the country, there's practically, you're not bringing in any investors. So from a long-term standpoint, if we continue to develop that sector, or that technically it's a sector, it's not even an industry, right?
Well, let's look at agriculture, my brother.
I don't like talking about agriculture, because I think sometimes it's like a punch in the gut, right? Because the reason why I think it's a punch in the gut, because we make we make all this noise about it. I mean, if you listen to people, they make all this noise. We need to feed ourselves. We need to do this. We need to invest in agriculture. But I mean, whether you're looking at the budget or you're looking at these the borrowing implementation agency, right? You're just looking. I mean, it kind of baffles you, right? There's, what is it, $189 million, right? I think we talked about that earlier. I talked about that earlier. If you look, I think the last time we viewed the budget was last session, right? The allocation for that was 1.11% of the entire, right? 1% of the entire revenue that we collect goes towards agriculture. However,
taking around 3 million of the budget.
3 million, right? However, we're seeing here that the Ministry of Agriculture is getting $89 million of money that we're borrowing to carry out projects, right? So in that case, it begs the question: what type of project are they carrying out? What are some of the projects? And this is why I think maybe the Minister of Agriculture need to, maybe we can get some connection and get her on the show and really have a good discussion with her.
What is there is the over the years, whether it's the African Development Bank, whether is there are different institutions, there are different projects. They have a project management unit at the Ministry of Agriculture. So some of these things, a lot of the funds can be grant, some of them can be loan. Okay, these projects are for different situations. For example, they have a project.
So you're saying they're not necessarily agriculture based?
No, they're agriculture. They're agricultural.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to explain.
Okay.
Sometimes some of them can be feeder roads, especially the African Development Brand Project are feeder roads, right? The question is how, we develop it. Some of them can be just tree crop. The thing is that
crops. That was the term that they use in the report. Tree crops.
Tree crop. So, they say, for example, what do you mean by tree crop? They say over the years, the rubber, some of these different rubber plantations, right? Not Firestone, but they had people who were into the supply of rubber to Firestone and to different situations. So these trees were sitting down there during the war period. So a lot of them got damaged. So to rehabilitate them, the trees, so that they get back to their productive capacity to be able to say, for example, if the rubber to be able to, you know.
But do you think it's a good way to spend money to or leverage the project team within the Ministry of Agriculture to be doing tree crop when you know a country that is you live in a country that can't feed itself? Do you think we should be engaging into? Do you think that is a sustainable engagement to go rehabs or rubber trees or whatever other tree crops that are there when we supposed to be focusing on as opposed to focusing on food production?
Yeah, okay. You see, like William said the last time, these people operate differently, right? So it's like what you're talking about is teach me to feed so that I can feed myself and not depend on you.
Right.
But the other way around is I will give you food each day. All right. So what I do is say, for example, smallholder farmers, right? So they come to you, they say, okay, all these smallholder farmers, they're out of business because of the war, because of other situations. So what we do is we give them little things so that they will be able to grow their farms so that they can feed their, in the meantime, okay, it's like bridge over troubled waters. The ultimate goal is what you're talking about for the country to be able to produce farms that will be able to bring goods to the market and feed itself.
Access.
These entities, these multinational and other entities, they are not into that business. That's his business. That's why you have access to financing. That's why you're talking about the Agricultural Development Bank and all these things.
Right.
Right? People should take loans or other avail themselves to other financial situations which may not be readily available, because agriculture is a risky business to finance.
Very, very.
Right? By heavy financing companies, except they know that yes, the dividend they will get their money back as sure.
Right.
Okay, so what they do in the interim, while you're figuring out that as a country, will come in and help you in the meantime. So we'll look at the smallholder farmers. Okay, the smallholder farmers will give them feedings, we'll give them agricultural implements, we'll give them this, we'll give them fertilizer, we'll give them they will have the ability. Some of those things are grants, but portion of those are loans. That's why you have the 89 million. That will accumulate to the 89 million. Okay, so in the meantime, so that one of the projects that I'm trying to describe, so that in the meantime, whether in Bon County, in Lofa County, farmers, their smallholder farmers, can be able to rejuvenate their farms and feed themselves, their homes, their town, and be able to bring some of that to the market to sell, so that they can raise some money to bring it back. In the meantime, they are providing smallholder agricultural sector to the economy. But is that enough for the mechanized farming that will produce and the tons of rice that we need in the country? No, they're not financing that. So they will build the roads, they will build the little feeder roads to bring your farm, they call it farm to market road. They will bring a feeder roads, they develop some of them good roads, some of them big roads actually. Okay. So it's not Michelle, it's not agribusiness I'm talking about. I say, agriculture, I mean financing. I mean every financing, Mitchell, finance is a risk. So anybody that gives you loan, they try to look at the risk. They try to do your underwriting, right? And when they underwrite you, if your risk is high, they don't put their money behind it.
Absolutely.
So what I'm talking about is in Liberia, it has been a situation where it has been difficult to finance. For example, even during the smallholder situation, you find out that the youth, right, they're supposed to come to provide labor. They prefer to go to Bokonjile to go do diamond stuff than to come do agriculture. Because for them, agriculture is, quote unquote, a time-consuming venture that takes time to bring back dividend. And these people, they are talking about instant gratification. They're talking about getting money today. The youth man in a community, they're talking about how you
So you're saying that it's
get the
again.
pepper business and get instant money today and carry on his activity than to say he wants to be in agriculture. That's one of the
Right.
challenges.
Right. I agree to you to I will agree with you to an extent, because when I was in Liberia, there was this I think Mandingo girl right in front of not too far from the president's church there. She was selling all these fruits. Like every time we drive, I would stop by and pick up some. And we used to buy watermelon from her, right? And then one day we stopped there to ask. We asked for the watermelon. She said, "Oh, I didn't go to Sierra Leone this weekend, so I don't have watermelon. I didn't go to such and such place. She said they usually get the watermelon from Sierra Leone." That statement actually kind of, you mean to say that we cannot produce watermelon, just to that. That's the reason why I'm agreeing with you. The fact that she said she had to go to Sierra Leone to go buy watermelon in order to sell it, and she didn't have it. So I agree with you to understand that sometimes I think sometimes we're not, the average person in Liberia is not focused on farming. Everybody's just in Monrovia there. But I don't want us to get away too much from that segue. I mean, go off a tangent too much. So I agree with you on that. But I think there's a lot with that level of that amount of money that is going into that administration specifically, since we want to focus on that. I think there's a lot more that can be done. They can be very strategic as opposed to really focus on bringing making sure that we're food sufficient, as opposed to going to these small projects and small farms and making sure these people rehabilitate them and
Yeah, so let
and
me go back to Michelle again.
right.
What I was talking about in context. What I was talking about the risk of financing. That's what I was talking about. But then, your point is you don't follow that point yet. But I mean, it's not just agribusiness, but agriculture as a whole. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So financing agriculture project is like any financing of any project is risk associated. So the financing entity has to weigh that in this stage, financing has to be available. Local financing has to be available through the banks,
Mhm.
and there are people who there were a lot of agriculturists who try to, and I sat with when I was doing the IFC program, doing business in Liberia. I sat with a few agriculturists. I don't want to call name right now, but there was some of them that lamented the issue of access to financing was one of the problems,
Mhm.
of doing agricultural business. But again, the banks were also looking at the risks involved, whether they would get their return, whether they would get their money back,
Right.
for agricultural businesses. So that is why I was trying to talk about Michelle.
No, in addition to that, if I may shed a little bit of, if I may add to that, the reason why agriculture is even risky from a lending standpoint is because, let's say, Michelle, let's say you come to us and say, hey, I want uh 150,000 because I want to build a chicken farm, a poultry farm, such in such and such place, right? Well, not poultry. I want to make this agriculture farm, whatever it is, even cassava or whatever it is, right? Um, Now, depending where you are with the farming, if you already have the place brush and you already planted the cassava, we're going to assess how long that time will take for that thing to grow for you to harvest it. I know some cassava is in it said 6 months or 3 months or so, right? You can harvest it. I'm not sure if that is true, right? Now the question becomes to the lender or the bank is, how are you going to be paying back that money until you harvest, before you harvest the cassava and start selling and start paying back the money? So right. um, Another, you can say, hey, they can give it to you in a draw period. What I mean is a draw period is that you take it you take the money even every month to do what you're supposed to do, and then for a year you only pay interest on it for a year. Then after that 12-month period, interest period, you start paying principal and interest payment. But regardless of what terms and structure they give it to you, it's still risky because we don't know. You cannot determine the future earning of the produce that you're going to make. We don't know
Mhm.
if locusts will come on your farm and eat the cassava, and you're gonna come and say, "Hey, I have grasshopper in the farm. They ate all the cassava, or these insects got in and ate all the cassava, so I'm not able to pay." So from that standpoint, is dangerous. Now, if you were to bootstrap yourself, I know this is a very too harsh to say. If you were to bootstrap yourself to say, "Hey, I produce cassava every year. I have a big cassava farm. However, I'm coming to you guys to borrow such and such, say 150,000." Um, then we can say, okay, this guy's been doing it for a long time. He already knows how to do it. He's making such and such amount, even with whatever he has. So we can give him to have him. We can give him that money to have him expand his funds. You can say, I want to get bigger, right? In that case, then it's doable, right? Then we can say the less is less risky. But in regardless of which structure you go, it's still risky because you
Yeah, but
cannot.
what
We
adding
don't.
to
We
that,
don't.
what could help agribusinesses, for example? I'm going back to Michelle. But before I go back to Michelle, there's a question here. It happens that government library is actually the consignor slash borrower of the farmer, and then that money flows to the farmer. Is that a correct assumption? That assumption may not be the case. Focus on Liberia. The government, these different loans that we're talking about that we're looking at 89 million naira. The government, like through these different, the government is a borrower. Yes, I agree. But what the government is, what that project is intended to do, what some of the project was intended to do was to provide a facelift,
Hmm.
say for example, to the smallholder farmers or to
Hmm.
the true crop farmers, to provide a
Right.
facelift to them so that they can be able to pick up from there and continue. Okay. So yes, government is the borrower, but government is trying to inject agriculture into the economy. So try to improve the agriculture sector of the economy, right? So government borrowed this money, or most of the money was grant, by the way. So to assist this, give a booster. But coming back to Michelle, agribusiness, right? What will propel agribusiness, because at the end of the day, agribusiness is a business about taking this agricultural produce and turning it into business, right?
Hmm.
So you it's a whole encompassing thing. For example, when I work in Ghana, the Ghana developed what we call the non-traditional export, right? And they launched a whole project. World Bank and different people funded that thing. Today, Ghana, they can export star-kissed tuna.
Hmm.
They can export today. They even exporting all these different liquor that we're drinking. Right? I can be amazed. Sometimes I go to some airport, I see that.
Mm.
But we used to go to when I was head of the FIU, we used to travel. We used to buy these things. These drinks with the herbs in it.
Hmm.
So that project helped agribusiness, because now the people had where to channel or to sell their produce.
That
That
was my
include
point exactly. Why
that
can we do
include
that
not
to
just the
larger
farm to
scale?
market road, but it include warehousing. It includes keeping the thing cold during the summer, during the hot time, and keeping it warm during the cold time. It includes where to offload the products.
Then can you look at the entire supply chain? Let's say we focus hypothetically, we look at that very case in Liberia. I know we're going off tangent here, but that's fine. Let's say hypothetically we look at that very case in Liberia, right? In that case, we need that. In that case, if we want to create a model that we can use apply to every agriculture segment in our country, then we look at the entire supply chain for one. Let's say Ghana, I mean, let's say cassava, and I keep using cassava. We look at the entire supply chain of that. Let's say you harvest it, they bring it to peel it, they sell some if they can, whatever they can sell. You peel it, you dry it. If you need to package them, you package it, or you make fufu out of it. You have to put it in a cold storage. You look at the entire supply chain, right? And once you perfect that one sector, that one product, right? Then you can look at the other one. You say, if we can do that with the cassava, we can do that with other thing, other crops or
Gabriel,
vegetables as well.
one thing that can help. One of the things that can help, like from my experience working in Ghana, and one thing I have in Liberia, and we have it. We have the landmark. We have the different thing. Tourism, right? Because you talk about produce, you talk about pineapple, you talk about apple. You go to Ivory Coast today, you see the kind of banana and the fruits that are in the street that people selling. All right, this is part of agribusiness, and because when you do tourism, you have all these different people coming to your country. Today we're having the 200 years, the millennial program.
In
You know
December,
the amount of
happening in
Liberia.
December.
You know the amount of things that we buy in Liberia. Right now I'm having a connection with people to take my. I'm having some. I don't want to say it, but I'm having some dividend in there too. Right? These people are going. We're connecting. We're getting some money out of that project. Right? Because I have a facility that I want to use, so they're using it. So if you have tourists coming, they're going to Patawi Waterfall today. They're going to Rabas Street tomorrow. The old man then will bring a king juice to the street to sell. They'll be bringing a pineapple to sell. At the end of the day, it grows. So if you have the market available, agribusiness will grow. And then now the banks will see, the financier will see why they should put their financing.
They take risks in that sector.
Into these businesses so that, because they know that these businesses will sell these products and will get money and they'll pay their loan back.
But we know that.
People will let their feet.
But we know that is not true. We know our tourism sector has been, and we know the reason why we don't have that tourism sector, right? There's tourism, people go there, but also infrastructure. I know we're getting off topic here, but infrastructure, you need people to get to this place. You need people to take people to that waterfall.
Why infrastructure?
Roads.
What infrastructure you need?
Roads. What
road? My man, I was in Gambia. Let me tell you something. They got some kind of place in the city. The place you pass, it was even the West Slum in Liberia.
So you will say in that case,
people pass there and pay that money every day. The guys have the picture. Go to the place they call Gambia. Go to Gambia for example. There's a town just as Gambia.
Right.
What there? Right. They just built out one road in the middle of in the city to connect everything.
Right.
And that's it. The rest of it, what they do best is to market it. Between October to March, Senegambia can be so full with people that hotels can be booked.
Right.
So people give their houses out as Airbnb, and they have just that.
So would you say,
is that correct?
Right, without dwelling on that, would you say we have an image problem and a marketing problem?
We like to put a cat before the horse. We want somebody to give $2 million for us to do infrastructure for to do this. Hey, you knew what you need to do. For example, there are two things you need to do. You already have the road from the main road there, from the main bombing highway to Bowarasa. The road that go to Cape Man, that's all you need to face. And the road that passes through Robert's Port, that's all you need to face. The next thing you need to do, Robert's Port is available for tourism. Market it. You don't need 50,000 to do that. You just need website. You just need bulletin board. That's all you need. Once you market it, the white people will go there. The Liberian will go there. We used to go sleep to, when I was working with GMAP, we had the white people who used to go sleep to this boy, the former Minister of Lands and Mines, minister. He had a place there. We used to go sleep there.
Right.
That place, whole day the water turning our tents.
Right.
I was to pay 150 to go rent that place per night.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we got off topic a little bit. So let's come
back to the topic. So
yeah, so
we got to close.
Gentlemen, we're going to be closing. We've been on here, so let's take 10 minutes. So because we're going to continue this next.
Can we? I know we veer off topic a little bit. I think that was way too off.
The government, talking about
Can
this. Let me come back. This is topic that is.
I think this is touching Alex heart.
Yeah, this topic is
right.
thing. We always put the cart before the horse. We think we need millions of dollars to build all the road to get all the electricity. Yeah, we need some electricity. But guess what? A lot of people operated in our country when we didn't have electricity. A lot of people operated in our country when roads were bad, during Ellington.
Mm-hmm.
Road was very bad. You could not even drive that road.
Mm-hmm.
And they faced all that road. They provided some level of electricity. Metal Steel and all the people that are down there producing their own current most of the time. Let me add that caveat, right? People were having businesses and producing their own current. All you need to do is do this and sell it. I've seen this in Senegal. I've seen this in Gambia. All right. When the results start coming, then you say you want to expand now. Then you say you want to spend the millions of dollars now to do this, to get the thing back. I was in Ghana, my friend. We saw the thing grow. But we don't take the thing, we don't take it, we don't say, okay, let's do it. What in Gambia? What is in Gambia than in Gambia? What in there? I was there. I went there 2 different times. What in there? I just simple man, they just have that big bulletin board in the middle of the room. They have it in every hotel. That's how they get there. It's private sector wrong. Mm-hmm. They liberalize it, it's private sector wrong.
Yeah. That's another topic for another time.
What is Senegal? They have tourist cities. They're opening for tourism. What they come from Europe? They just coming there.
Yeah. We that's another topic for another time. I think we can.
Let's go, man. Because you're getting me passionate now.
I know. We came out with this dead thing, and then you were kind of not into it. Well, it seemed like you're energized now. Like I don't know, coffee you thinking or whatever it is, but you seem very energized. I don't know if we should take a break and then come back and then address the other 2 questions.
We're out of time. We got to close the program.
we shouldn't go for a break. Is that what you
Michelle said? Am I right to assume that? Let's just close the program instead of going. Michelle said, am I right to assume that one help gave local farmers access to market, and the other provided the financing?
What? Am I right to assume that one helped give local farmer access to market and the other provide? Who's the one that they're referring to?
I think this gentleman was regarding the whole Ghana model, that looking at how Ghana was able to influence that sector.
So
right.
Inside.
So the government as the order of the day provides that first part. Help give local farmers access to market. Mm-hmm. What is access to market, right? Access to market is the ability for them to be able to bring their goods from the farm to the marketplace, right? And that's where the government stepped in to be able to say, okay, we build this road. And that's what some of the projects, some of the agricultural project that we have the 89 million loan, but most of that, like I said, was for grants. So the farm to market rule, as I would call it, is what the government's PSA. That's why government took those grants and those loans on, and that as captured under the Ministry of Agriculture. Now, the other provide the financing. The financing now, you on your own to go look for money
to produce
to the bank or to wherever. And what the government could do, there was some people, talk about bringing back the Agricultural Development Bank and all that stuff. So Agricultural Development Bank, for example, whether I'm for or against, that's not a discussion. But the Agricultural Bank, for example, it will focus only on financing agricultural projects.
And development stuff.
Development stuff. So because that's their way, they understand that area. But maybe the commercial banks, the merchant bank, the other banks may not understand that.
Right.
So financing that can be difficult. But Agricultural Bank is a bank where people, agricultural economists and other people that are working there that understand that market. But that's where the government now can also capitalize and evolve, or what you call your guarantee. These financing projects and things from different entities to say, okay, we're establishing the bank, we'll guarantee this loan here, the agricultural bank will be able to pay. That's what government can produce.
Right.
But it's the farmers now farmer association or businesses now will come now to come
Right.
to those places to seek their own financing, which they will pay back and
Right.
interest on their own.
Mhm.
So I hope, Michelle, I answer your question. Even though I'm not an agriculturalist, but I work at the Ministry of Agriculture for a little bit, so at least I got some more idea.
Okay, this comment comes off
Okay.
an earlier question.
Michelle, you're the
LPMC
agricultural
and
man now.
defunct agriculture bank.
Yeah.
Ah,
So the comment comes off an earlier question. LPNC
Instead of
and the
comments, you meant question. The question comes
yeah.
up in earlier.
From the defunct agriculture bank, and
Yeah.
I think I'm one of the biggest proponents for that, and the reason I know in our modern economy, it seemed kind of archaic, right? But especially I think it's unique to the it's unique to Liberia, because we want to develop the agriculture sector. I think everybody know that we are full insecure, right?
Mhm.
And if you want to do that, you want to be intentional about that. You have to do intentional things to make sure you revive that sector. And I think one of the biggest reason why I'm a proponent of it, because it will give. I think Alex talked about the whole. He went over it already. It will give people the ability. So here's the thing about commercial banks and other institutions in the country, right? They have every bank or financial institution have what we call risk appetite, right? So in as much that the government might be telling, UBA or LBDI or these other eco banks, say, hey, we want you guys to establish agriculture sector or agriculture lending division. They have their own risk appetite. They may not even want to do it because it doesn't bring them money. They may not even want to establish one even in Wanga or whatever county, right? Because they know their risk appetite, they know the level of risk. However, with the agricultural bank, is it will be partly government funded. Government will be able to guarantee that loan, so it will become less risky. In as much that people, farmers or cooperative of farmers can go in there and borrow money, and the government guarantee have, given that they have a good underwriting team to really understand the level of risk. So it makes it easy for people now to go in there and be able to take money that the government is guaranteeing, right? So that's the reason why I think some of us are actually big proponent of the Agriculture and Development Bank, that it should be revived and really focus on the agriculture sector. The intentional reason being that we want to be full insecure. We can give us 10, 20 years or 30 years from now, we want to be full secure, right? And not be able to be going outside to be buying pepper, or going to Guinea to go buy pepper, or going to Sierra Leone to go buy watermelon, right? So that was the reason I think some of us are proposing that idea that they should bring that back. Yeah. You're muted.
Yeah, I was trying to talk to Michelle, and this is the last question, and we'll wrap up this thing and close. But
Right.
Michelle, your question, that's the ultimate goal at the end of the day. Growing food product rather than on any crop that yield the most return. Yeah. Like Gabriel said, when they launched the non-traditional export, say for instance in Ghana, they were purposeful. That at the end of the day, we want to do this thing so that we can be able to export our produce.
Yep.
And that's why they say non-traditional export. It's not the diamond, it's not the gold that Ghana is full of, it's not the iron ore, it's not the bauxite. But at the end of the day, it was all the different products, including agricultural products. So that project yielded the most return on that investment, because now they could even put the goods that are coming from the agricultural produce in the sea fishing, because the tuna was being fished in Ghana waters, and it was being produced in Ghana. The Starcase Tuna Company. All right, I did some consultancy work at that company. All right, besides working on the non-traditional export, I also did some work. So it used the benefit. It makes agriculturists to be able to take the risk to go for loans.
Right.
And it makes banks to be able to take the risk to give them loans.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it use the products use the result, the ultimate result that is needed. And it leads to economic growth. Mm-hmm. But you need to be purposeful at these things. It's like the way we need to be purposeful about tourism is to bring about 100, maybe 200,000 people a year in our country. Start from the airport. You know how much money will come to the airport? Alone, because they're charging passenger service fee, they're charging all the different planes that are coming. You know how many planes that will attract? How many planes will attract? Just start from the airport. You know how many man drivers will be selling at King Jude that will be getting money to Patawi Waterfall? When 200 people go there in a week time, you know how many people will be bringing a little Grand into the market? I mean, it's just something that we think that Patawi Waterfall, that people can go there. But how do we market it? All we need to do, you talking about road, the Banga road is clear from Morio to Banga at 2 hours. In fact, from Morio to Patawida, from my house to Patawida, about less than 2 hours, right? To Patawi Waterfall. People go that the road is clean. All you need to do is get rid of investor, put fence there. Let people pay to go inside. You know what happened? The people that are in Banga will be coming to Patawida to buy to rent house to be able to sell.
Undersell, yeah.
People that will be sleeping over in Banga, people that will be sleeping over in Patawi itself, hotel will start cropping up there just by marketing it. You don't need road to go to Banga to prepare Patawi Waterfall. You only need marketing. Mm-hmm. At this point, you don't need road. You talking about road, you don't need road. You talking about road to Cape Man, you probably don't even need road. If the people want to ski, they will go ski.
All right.
They already go there anyway. But market it, make it a business.
When you
strip up, crop up. Restaurant can crop up. Kinju shop can crop up. Kobo shop can crop up. Lababi do all the thing. Everybody making that money.
I think we want better thing than Lababi.
We're going to continue this. We're going to continue this next week.
Yeah, but you go to the amount of beatings, man. Let's talk about
the reason why I said that because what you just mentioned, well, we should be wrapping up shortly. What you just said, in terms of putting it in a fence, Cuba does that. The only thing that belongs to the government. But I think whoever owns the waterfall, they can do that, right? Whether you want to market, sell it, charging people to go inside.
The government need to take steps on these things. Government provides enabling environment.
Right.
Private sector can, then the private sector will yield. You got to encourage people. And then we've got to end the program.
Yeah, let's do another, we will do another session next week on the budget, the debt 2.0. I think we kind of went off tangent and we never came back.
I thought during the discussion of the budget, we're talking about economic growth. We're talking about possibility to grow the revenue.
Yeah, the possibility of growing the economy. Yeah, that's what we're doing next.
For the next two sessions that we'll do.
Yeah, I think that would be a very interesting topic.
William Pondot, who has agreed to come, but he will come towards the end of October. So he will come talk about some economics here, economic group issues. So
thank you very much. Alex, let us know when that guy comes so we can make it happen, okay?
Yeah, so next Saturday we'll be talking about the budget performance. We'll talk about how to grow budget, how to limit budget. In a general, so we're looking for panel people to come on board to have this conversation.
Yeah.
So, okay. And then the following Saturday, we'll talk about economic growth, and William Pono and all those people will be coming on.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We're definitely going to continue this discussion next week. We're looking at Liberia's debt, and more importantly, do we need to increase it? And if we do, where should we focus on? What are the targets? What are areas? And also, is it a bad debt? How are we comparing it to? Who are we comparing to? What nation and so forth? Are there any examples in the West African region that we can look to of what they're doing and see what we're doing?
Right.
Today we looked at just the debt, what it is, and the different ministries covers. And next week we're going to be looking into more stuff. We want to ask you to please tune in, stay tuned to focus on Liberia, where we strive to elevate, educate, and promote all things Liberia. Following this show, we got a 2 p.m. show. And then also on Sunday, we have a few shows coming up, one of them being On Point, and the other one we're going to be interviewing one of the infamous general during the Liberian Civil War. So we want you to tune in, and please don't miss it. And once again,
not coming on your radio, you calling them infamous?
well, so
There's a reason why.
There's a reason why. But sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but
okay.
So with that being said, whether you are infamous or famous, whether you think we should get more debt or less debt, or whether you think the government needs to do more or less, understand that we're all Liberians and we're trying to make our place a better place. With that being said, thank you and stay tuned.
Thank you.
We are Liberians.